I'm going to be straight up. The marketing for Dungeons & Dragons has not been great. I went to go see this movie because I'm a fan of Chris Pine and a bunch of other actors in this film, but it hasn't marketed as like something that's worth going to see to theater. And that's what I'm going to talk about when I break down if this is a great escape, blockbuster, fantasy epic you should check in the theater or something you should wait for streaming or pass complete. Well, let me start with the premise. A charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embark on an epic quest to retrieve a long-lost relic. But their lovely adventure goes dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. Let's start off with the good. So this movie, right off the bat, when I was like halfway through, I was like, this reminds me of like the fun characterizations of the characters from the Guardians of the Galaxy. Chris Pine even reminded me of Chris Pratt's Star-Lord a lot in this film. And also has like the swashbuckling adventures and feel of a Pirates of the Caribbean, the good ones. Fantasy like feeling also of Lord of the Rings. Which I was like, wow, this is a really good mixture and pitch if this is how they pitched doing this movie. When it comes to those characters, Chris Pine is the anchor and he does a fantastic job playing the bard. Chris Pine plays a very sympathetic, fun, and charming character. I did not know Chris Pine could sing that well. I was really surprised and I wish that he sung more throughout the movie. It would have been really fun. He is fully committed to the character, the tone of the film, which the film understands what they're going for as well. He does a great job of doing the comedic bits, leading the team, and also having you like tug at your emotional heartstrings. He did a really great job with this more serious emotional family moments as well, with his goal being to get back to his daughter any means necessary after being set up and going into jail for a crime. Michelle Rodriguez plays the barbarian of the group, and she was born to play this role. Quick-witted, deadpan humor and delivery, and really showed the softer side of herself, especially when she was with Chris Pine's bard character and his daughter and a lot of the other younger characters. She also was this tough badass. Oh my god, she did so great with all the action sequences. You could barely tell when it switched between her and a stunt double. She did a lot of that stuff really well, and I want to see her more like high budgeted action films. I think the chemistry with her and Chris Pine was done really, really well. They made them to be like best friends, and you don't really get to see male and female best friends a lot in these kind of movies. They usually end up together, but the way they portrayed it is like they're just best friends. They're like brother and sister, and I really enjoyed their back and forth and their camaraderie and her personal story arc as well. I think that they did a great job of giving each character something, a little bit of something to carry you through and get towards the end of the movie that they also cared about. And she just wanted to see Chris Pine's character do well, and also his daughter, because she was like Justice Smith plays a paladin, and he's like insecure, has no confidence, always messing up kind of character unless his life is on the line. And this character, played by anybody else or written by anybody else, could have went really, really annoying and just bogged the movie down. But Justice Smith and the writers did a great job of making him feel another character sympathetic, fun. He had his jokes here and there, and then he just had a character growth that you can understand as you go throughout the movie. He was the butt of the joke a lot of times, but not so much that it became annoying. It was a really good balance, and him trying to prove himself or overcome his insecurities was another great subplot to the film. And Sophia Lillis, who, if you ever seen the Netflix show I'm Not Okay With This, or It Chapter 1, and I think the kids were in It Chapter 2, I'm not 100% sure. She's been around for a while. She's been really great in everything I've seen her in, and she's great in this as well. She plays a druid, which I thought was really cool, because when I played D&D, that one campaign that I got to play, I was a druid, so it's cool to see a character like mine be brought to life. And she did a great job. All the action sequences, and she was able to morph into different characters, so she had some of the coolest visual moments in the film, and she just was the glue of the team. Like when they were starting to get astray or they needed things to figure out, she was there for everybody. You know, she has this thing where she doesn't like humans because of something that's happened in her past, and now she's working with 3 of them. And once again, another subplot that was interesting, and maybe it didn't fleshed out as everybody else's, but I think the action and story told enough that it was done really well. So by the time we get to the end, it made sense for the decisions that she made. And one of the biggest highlights of the film is a scene where she is getting chased, and she has to switch between different animals back and forth while trying not to get killed. And that's some of the coolest sci-fi special power action I've seen since Quicksilver scene in X-Men Apocalypse. And the rest of the supporting cast is really great as well. Hugh Grant, oh my God, chewing up the scenery as Forge. He wasn't in the movie as much as I would hope he was because I liked his character so much. Every time he was there, he made an impression, and he just looked like he was having a blast. So that was always good. Reggie Jean Page, who a lot of people know from that Netflix series, I think Bridgerton, he did a great job as this powerful paladin. He brilliantly played him named Yender. He had no concept of like slang and things like that people use or euphemisms, and just the way it was going over his head, it kind of reminded me of Drax a little bit, but not as dumb as that character. And he was just really dope, and he had great chemistry with Chris Pine's Bard character, and that them going back and forth was really, really fun. It almost reminded me a little bit like if you've seen Avengers movies with Thor and Star-Lord and how those two went back, but not as silly as that. It was like they played it really well to the point where it could have gone that far, but it didn't. It kept it with some humanity and some realism, which is funny because it's a fantasy film that made it really relatable and made those guys have like this sibling rivalry kind of. And Daisy Head, which it was really cool to see her because she's in Shadow and Bone, and I'm a big fan of that show. To see her have like a big role as the menacing Sophina, she did a great job as the antagonist of this film. She was really, really scary throughout and really, really powerful, and she really commanded the role really well. So it was really cool to see her get a bigger role, and she did a great job. I really liked all the magical stuff she did and not really knowing what her end goal was, but when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, duh. And I gotta say, what makes this movie really work is that all the actors commit to their characters and the tone and the world that they're in and are having so much fun. That's what makes the movie fun, because you can see all the characters having fun, so it makes you join in and get lost in everything. And on top of that, they create this wonderful, colorful fantasy world, like I said, similar to something like Lord of the Rings. Obviously not as grand as that, because this doesn't have the budget of a Lord of the Rings film. It is something that is like, it feels very familiar, because obviously Dungeons and Dragons is the basis of almost all fantasy stuff, but it still feels fresh in a way because we haven't seen a movie like this in a long time, and you're getting to learn all this different lore and the worlds and the people and things like that. And it's not super original, but it's executed really well, because the writers here and the directors here worked on Game Night, one of the most underrated comedy films in the last 10 years. And instead of making this movie super duper serious, obviously there's serious moments because the characters have some serious moments throughout where they're trying to do things, but a lot of it is played for comedic effect, but not too goofy where they go over the board with it, but just enough where you can chuckle, you laugh, you smile. And there was some jokes in there that was super meta to the real world, super meta to Dungeons and Dragons, but just really funny in itself. So I think that they made the right choice of making this more funny than a serious movie. And speaking of the world, the VFX, the CGI, and the practical effects for 90% of the film is fantastic. This is one of the best looking fantasy CGI VFX kind of films that we've gotten in a long time lately. A lot of these big blockbusters have had some really clunky CGI or VFX, and I was really glad to see that almost everything looked great, from the people in costumes, having actual people in costumes and then making it look realistic. It really worked to have them feel like real characters than just being CGI constructs, to the CGI monsters and constructs. That was done really well as well, and very menacing, and made it feel like these people were actual danger, like they were the lying that you see on those posters, it was actually there. So I think they did a really great job with all that, the powers and everything. There was a little bit of wonky CGI here and there with specific person powers, but you don't see it so much. It didn't bother me that much, but I did notice it when I went with my friend. I was like, this looked better than a lot of the Marvel movies that's come out. And he was like, what about that lightning? And I was like, oh yeah, but everything else looked great. So yeah, this is definitely something that it will be great to see in a theater because of the spectacle. And when I saw the runtime for this movie being 2 hours and 20 minutes, I got a little scared because I didn't know if this kind of film can hold up that runtime. But the movie's pacing is so good, it breezes by. After like a little bit of a slow start, once things start going, it goes and it keeps going, and it has like action scene, story, plot, joke, action scene, story, plot, joke. And it's just a thing where you don't settle too long into any one part of the film, so you don't really get bored, and the characters are so enjoyable and likable, and the action is actually choreographed really well, and everything's so bright and colorful that it just makes you want to just be there for as long as possible. So by the time I got to the end of the movie, I was like, oh wow, this was really fast. This went by really fast, and I really want more. And I think they did a really great job. On top of that, with the fast pacing, giving each major character a character arc, and completing it by the end of the film in a satisfying way. Let's talk about the bad. So even though I think that the script and the screenplay are pretty good, it is a little bit shallow. There were moments where I could have felt like it could have went a little deeper into the character's backstory or motivations or talking about what is going on with them. They kind of did it at mostly the surface level, which I kind of like understand because they made it more of a fun movie than a serious movie, but I would have loved to get a little bit more out of these characters and the world itself. They built a really interesting dynamic with the world, but we only got little tiny pieces of it. So hopefully maybe if they get to do a sequel, I hope so, that they get to build it out even more. And another thing I hope that if they get to do a sequel to explore more is that for a movie that's called Dungeons and Dragons, there's not a lot of dungeoning and there's not a lot of dragoning. Like obviously there is a dungeon, there is a dragon, well a couple of dragons, but it's not a lot. I thought that those things would be more into the film because that's what the title of the film was, and it was not. It was a little bit more of a small part of the film, but it was still executed really well. I just hope that for future installments we get to do some more of that kind of exploration and battle more dragons. Let's talk about the verdict. Look, when I was in the theater with the people, it was packed and everybody was having a good time and fun. You could tell that everybody was wanting to laugh and have fun and enjoy a great escape. Like I talked about in the beginning of this review, if this movie's worth going to see in theaters, I think it is, to go in the theaters for 2 hours and 15 minutes with a bunch of friends to watch a film that is just going to make you have a bunch of fun and just really, really great. It has no agendas or anything like that. It's just giving you this really fun fantasy story. It's not trying to push a narrative or teach you anything like that, and it's just really, really fun, and I think that is worth checking out in the theaters if you have a chance. I really, really love this movie. It was so fun, and I really hope we get to see more. So with that said, I'm going to give Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves a B. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What would you rate Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves if you've seen it? And if you've not seen it, based on my review, do you feel like you can go check it out in theaters or wait for it to hit streaming? Let me know all those thoughts down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you can get notified of my reviews, reactions, ranking lists, live discussions, and more. And you can catch more of my content right now.